Shanti, how are you? Happy Ganesh Chaturthi to everybody. And as I mentioned in all of my previous videos, that whatever religious ceremonies that we hold, they all represent the divine activities by God. So whatever He did to us in transforming us from the members of the lowest intellect to the members of the highest intellect, that is being celebrated as various religious ceremonies, and Vinayak Chaturthi is one among them. And we think that it represents the birthday of Lord Vinayaka or Ganesh. So as the religious story goes, he was created by his mom Parvati while she was taking out the dirt from her flesh. So she just hold it like this, and that became Lord Ganesha. So if that's possible, well, there won't be any logic. There won't be any logic behind any religion. So it obviously means there is something that human mind can't grasp. So there is something very spiritual that only God has to descend and give the meaning of it. So today, based on God's knowledge, we are going to unfold the revelations behind the celebration of this Ganesh Chaturthi. Throughout the world, how they celebrate Ganesh Chaturthi is they first have a statue of Ganesh made of clay, and they will decorate it with jewels and flowers, and they will offer bhog, that is prasad or food, favorite food for Ganesh for the first 2 to 3 days. Then they will take that to some water sources like sea, river or pond, and they will dissolve the statue. And it looks absolutely illogical to why we need to decorate the clay statue like that. Then why should we dissolve it in water eventually? What's the benefit? What's the significance of that celebration? What does it actually represent? So as we all know that in Bible it was mentioned that God created us out of a clay. He created Adam out of clay, and from Adam he created Eve and the rest. So he needs someone, and that one was made of clay. But even that is not logical, right? So what it actually means is our human body or body of any other animal was indeed made of the 5 elements. So we know commonly that we say this flesh to be the earth. So what they mean by creating Ganesh out of clay is clay represents the mind with dull intellect. We used to scold people if they don't behave correctly. We would scold him like, is your mind made of brain or clay? What is inside your head, brain or clay? So it actually means that someone who is dull-minded. So it obviously represents every single human being of Kali Yuga. We are dull-headed. We can't think of our own. We can't discriminate between the right and wrong. So it is during Kali Yuga God Himself descends into this earth and transform us from the dull-minded to the bright-minded, or you can call it as from the clay to gold. Yes, he is doing this in the end of Kali Yuga. He does this every 5,000 years because the world cycle lasts for 5,000 years only. This is called a kalpa, and within one kalpa there are 4 yugas or yug: Satyug, Tretayug, Dwapar Kali Yuga. So this Satyug was filled with deities, and those deities, after taking several rebirths for the first 2500 years, slowly become ordinary humans like us, and eventually they become filled with evil thoughts, so that we can call them demons. They are nothing but us. Yes, we are demons. It is us who are represented as demons in religious scriptures, because we are now filled with devilish characters. So God comes in the end and reveals that this world is going to become heaven back again. First 2500 years would be heaven, followed by hell in the last 2500 years. So this is a non-stop cycle that goes on forever. So heaven will definitely be followed by hell, which will definitely be followed by heaven again. So this goes on and on. So God doesn't come in heaven because everything is perfect there. He doesn't enter in the middle, because that is when we start experiencing pain slightly. He doesn't come. Only when the pain and sorrow reaches the intolerable level, that is when God descends from his abode called Parandam or Parlog. From here he comes here and enters a man's and old man's body, because God doesn't take birth like us. That is why we couldn't see God. But God comes only once in this entire 5,000 year time cycle, that is in the end. That's why many religions say that God comes in the end. Like in Bible they say the second coming of Jesus Christ. In Hinduism they say Kalki Avatar at the end. But in reality it's neither Jesus Christ nor Sri Krishna that comes in the end, but God Shiva himself comes in the end. That's why we always see that God Shiva is always shown to be doing meditation in the crematorium, because this Kali Yuga is more like a crematorium, because nobody is alive with good characters. Everybody behaves like a living ghost. They are filled with these 5 vices like anger, attachment, ego, lust and greed. As a matter of fact, we all are sons and daughters of God Shiva. So it's not true that he only has 2 sons, say Ganesh and Kartik. No, they represent 2 kinds of sons. One who loves God unconditionally and he would do anything for God, that is God, Lord Ganesha. And the other one who always asks questions, who always have this innumerable number of doubts. So he couldn't believe in God as much as his elder brother Ganesh does. So which category we belong to determines whether we are Ganesh or Kartik. So as you know, Ganesh was not very kind in the beginning. He was very rough, just like us. He was filled with all these 5 vices. Then what happened one day was he encountered God Shiva and had a fight over allowing got Shiva into his home because he was not aware in the beginning that he was his father. So he was stubborn in refusing him to allow into his house as her mother was taking bath. So God, Shiv, gets furious and had a fight with him, and eventually he took his head off with his trident. Do you think God will ever do that to anybody for that matter? No, he wouldn't do that. That didn't happen like that. What those three sharp ends of a trident represents is the knowledge about the three times, past, present and future. So God says that this world was heaven in the beginning and it is hell now and it is going to be heaven again in the future. And you were deities filled with the divine qualities in the beginning, and you are lacking all the divine qualities and you are now filled with devilish characteristics, and you are going to become deities again filled with divine qualities. So with this in mind, when we encounter all sorts of situations, you wouldn't behave as the normal resident of Kali Yuga would do. For example, if you happen to watch a girl, very beautiful girl, all of a sudden that your mind is going to say something like, oh, how beautiful she is. So that's how Kali Yuga human would behave normally. But we belong to Sangam Yuga, because in the last 100 years God comes, that is called Sangam Yuga, where we and our beloved Father God Shiv meets. So he gives us the teaching that makes us back to deities, that helps us to get rid of all the devilish qualities. And the essence of his teaching is to remember God as a point of light. Not only God, even we are a point of light in between the forehead, which is why we have this habit of wearing tilak, red colored dot over here, because that is where we reside, and the rest of it is not us. This is our body, or you can call it the costume for the soul. While we were deities in heaven, we had this awareness that we are in fact souls, not this body. This body is under our control. We are not controlled by the body or bodily feelings. But what happened after the completion of first 2500 years is we forget that we are souls. Instead, we started to consider ourselves to be these perishable bodies and start getting addicted to the sensual pleasures, because of which we become slaves of those 5 vices: lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego. And that is when we started suffering pain and sorrow. But for the first 2500 years, we are not even aware of what sorrow looks like. Yes, it was filled with everything one needs to feel happy forever. It was filled with gold and diamonds, and we would be very beautiful in the beginning, and we would be filled with divine qualities. Not only humans, but also the other animals. Even lion and cow, they would take water from the same pond at the same time, which means even the wild animals, as we quote now, they didn't have those wild characters in the beginning. So it was even mentioned in Bible and Quran that lion and tiger would also take grass and plants as their food instead of other animals, as it does now. So that's how God created this world. That's why it was heaven. That's why everybody was very happy there, because nobody has this dull intellect to cause pain to one another. But after the completion of 2500 years, after becoming body conscious instead of soul conscious as we were in heaven, we started causing pain to each other. Because of this body consciousness, we get addicted to external pleasures. We want to get hold of that, but that is not possible. That is why we started experiencing pain, and as soon as we experienced pain, we started thinking of God, who gave heaven initially. So automatically we started to have thoughts of God, but in heaven we didn't think of God even for a second, because it was very happy. So we don't usually remember God during our happy times, do we? So that's true while we were in heaven. But only in the beginning of hell, when we started experiencing pain, that we started creating religions and religious worship places and all those religious scriptures. Despite that, our sorrow, they keep on increasing instead of decreasing. Why? Because we couldn't figure out that it is the body consciousness that causes all sorts of pain and sorrow. So when we reach the peak of sorrow, as we do now, that is exactly when God descends from his abode to this earth. He entered an old man's body and he names him Brahma, and he started giving teachings in the form of Murli. That's available totally free of cost in all Raj Yoga meditation centers that spread across the globe. So we got to listen to Murli daily, and also we need to think of God as a point of light. And before that, we need to consider ourselves to be the imperishable soul. So we have to consider ourselves to be the souls, and then we have to remember God as a point of light, as our beloved Father. The more we remember him, the more we are going to come out of those 5 vices. So what will happen eventually? We will be filled with bliss and peace, because it is the body consciousness that stops us from experiencing peacefulness and blissfulness, because peacefulness and blissfulness is the natural characteristic of every soul. So we have to get rid of that through the power of yoga. By yoga, I mean remembrance of God as a point of light. This is exactly what happens in Sangam Yoga, and all religious ceremonies are created as remembrance of what's going on here. So for instance, they create Ganesh out of clay, which means our mind is totally into this body and bodily feelings, or you can say it as clay. So we have to come out of this clay. So God gives his teachings by listening to Murli daily, and by remembering God daily, we slowly come out of the body consciousness and we will be becoming soul conscious. So that's how we conquer these 5 vices like lust, anger, greed, attachment and ego. So God decorates us with the jewels of knowledge and yoga, and that is exactly what we do after bringing home the clay statue of Ganesh, right? We decorate him with garland and jewels, and we worship him for the first 2 or 3 days. So it represents the last 100 years where God continuously decorates us with the jewels of knowledge and yoga. Eventually what happens is we conquer those 5 vices, because we get rid of body consciousness and we become fully soul conscious, which means we progress to the extent that we forget that we are even within this body. So that is what they show outwards physically, that we dissolve the clay statue in the water, which means we dissolve the consciousness of this body. So what remains after this body? That's the imperishable soul that lasts forever. So the time is very limited for doing this practice, because the time is going to be there until the world gets destroyed, because this will eventually happen in the end of Kali Yuga, because it is only during the world destruction that this world gets renewed into heaven. So that is something that is bound to happen. Nobody can stop it. That will be possible by the Third World War and also the natural calamities. So that will bound to happen. But what we need to do is we have to become ready. We have to be filled with divine qualities before that. Then what happens after that is the world will get destroyed, and every soul, no matter whether they have taken this knowledge or not, they would have to get rid of this body and they have to go back to where they came from. This is the soul world. It is from here that we come here, and we take birth, maximum of 84 births in this 5000 years. Then during the world destruction, again we would be going back to our home. From there again we will be coming, and this cycle goes on and on. And also we have this habit of drawing swastik during Ganesh Chaturthi, because we think it somehow represents Lord Ganesh. But that swastik is nothing but this time cycle, right? You can feel that it is in the form of swastik, right? It represents the time, 3 times, past, present and future. One has to be aware of this time cycle so that he can face any situation in Kali Yuga without getting fearful or angry. So we can stay calm like Ganesh only when we are aware of this time cycle continuously. So that's how Ganesh conquered all these 5 vices and eventually became Lord Krishna in the next birth. This is something that's not revealed in any religious scriptures. So this Ganesh is going to become Lord Krishna. Then who is Ganesh? It could be you and me. We are not aware of it. The more we remember God, more is the chance that we can become Sri Krishna. Not only Ganesh, but also during Navaratri celebrations that last for 9 nights in a row, we have the clay statue of Devi Durga, and we decorate her similarly as we do for Lord Ganesh. Then after the completion of 9 days, we sink the statue in the water source like ocean. So even there, what happens? Those 9 nights represent the fight between Devi Durga and the demon. So this is what I'm saying. So these things, whether it is 3 days of Ganesh Chaturthi or 9 nights of Navaratri, they all represent this time period, this last 100 years, where we fight those devilish characters out of us. So that's the thing. So what happens? So in the end, she wins, but we are sinking her in the sea. So it represents the soul, not the body. Soul wins over the body consciousness. So the same thing, every single religious festival represent the same incident that's been happening here. You can fit into any festival of any religion. It all boils down to this event where we drive out these 5 vices with the remembrance of God Shiva. So that's the weapon. And one is the weapon of remembrance, and another is the weapon of knowledge, because it is through knowledge that we know that we are addicted to those vices and we got to get rid of them. And God advises to stay out of those 5 vices, and also He reveals how we become addicted to them in Murli. So we got to listen to it daily. So you can find it online in all languages, whether it's Telugu Murli, Hindi Murli, Japanese Murli, Russian Murli. You can find it in all languages, and English Murli. So you can Google it as Murli of your language, and in that site there will definitely be some option to locate the center address, Raj Yoga Meditation Center address. You can go there, and if you need my help, you can always SMS me at this number +91 98 946 71 743, so that I can help you locate the Raj Yoga Meditation Center in your area, in your country. Before starting any work, we have this habit of drawing swastik, right? It means that we have to be present with this consciousness of this knowledge of 3 times. So we were deities in the beginning, and we are ordinary humans, and we have to get out of this pain and sorrowful world back to the world of bliss and peacefulness, that is heaven. For that, we have to keep on remembering God as a point of light. Moreover, we will be surrounded by 5 vices just to test whether you have actually conquered them. So you got to be aware of that too. Only then you will not fall for them. For example, if you are confronting a very beautiful girl, for example, the ordinary Kali Yuga people, as I already mentioned, would think of her external appearance and admire it. Instead, you would be watching her as a point of light. So that's the true herself, and the body is just a costume, and you don't get carried away by the external beauty. So you got to be steadfast in focusing your attention only towards the soul. I know it's difficult in the beginning, but you got to practice it continuously. It is possible. In the beginning you might fail for a couple of times, then you got to have courage to stand up and again focus your attention only on the soul. So it's a continuous work, because we are going to get the kingdom of heaven as the reward of this practice. So you don't get to heaven without any effort, right? Likewise, for doing any work, we will obviously be encountering some kind of obstacles. To get rid of that, we should be aware that obstacles will definitely come, and we should be patient, because going to heaven or getting any work done will definitely be filled with obstacles in Kali Yuga. But in other yugs, that's not the case. But in Kali Yuga, it's going to be that, because we have committed many sins because of these 5 vices in the past. So those sins come as obstacles. You got to understand that. So the more you remember God, more your sins are going to be washed off. Then eventually you will see obstacles going away from you. So you will no longer be afraid of obstacles. That's how you win. To remember that, as a symbol, you have this habit of drawing swastik before starting out any important task. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, comment, share and subscribe. And this is BK Sarvanakumar, beloved son of one and only God Shiva. Thank you.